And so it begins. The end is officially here, and Jaelan Phillips, you, sir, are Philadelphia Eagle.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Quite the start to the week where Jaelan Phillips, as of 7:30 this morning, I just hopped in my car to go do drop-off at preschool. The news came through. Jaelan Phillips traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 2026 third-round draft selection. The Dolphins are paying a portion of Jaelan Phillips' remainder of salary to help facilitate and buy up the draft pick that the Dolphins got back in return. There's a lot of layers to a move like this, and there's a lot of opinions, and I think most of them in some degree, some way, shape, and form are valid. I would start with this. Jaelan Phillips would not have been a player in a perfect world that I would have wanted to move off the roster. He's a wonderful human being. He's a very physically talented player. Did he make some of the plays this year that could have sealed some wins for Miami? No. That happens sometimes. And Jaelan's kind of always been a pressure over finisher kind of player. You know, I remember his first 2-3 seasons. There was a lot of conversation and debate about pressure and the value of pressure versus the finishing nature and where you feel it more. And Phillips has always kind of been one of those guys. But outstanding guy to have in your locker room, outstanding leader, has overcome so much adversity, came back, has been playing at a high level the last month or so, especially. Is one of the top pressure loggers in the NFL over the past 4 months or 4 weeks or so. And he's now a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Dolphins get a third-round draft choice back, which is their fifth top 100 draft selection that they are currently scheduled to make in 2026. And this is where, for me, this is not going to be the only wasteful offloading that you have. There are going to be other instances of players that you are transitioning away from off the roster. Could be massive in scale, could be smaller in scale. You're not going to optimize your 2026 budget for a lot of aggressive spending. You're just not. Okay, you've made too many big commitments. You didn't transition away from some of them faster. You doubled and tripled down on some contracts you shouldn't have. And now you're wearing that egg on your face because you paid money for Jalen Ramsey to go away too. And now you're paying to trade Jaelan Phillips to buy up a draft pick. And now reports, I'm playing with fire recording at noon on a Monday on the trade day before the trade deadline. Jaelan Phillips or Minkah Fitzpatrick might be next after Jaelan Phillips. Jordan Schultz reporting that there's some interest there. We'll get into all of those players and who might be next. But this, for me, you have to make this job, now that you've committed, in my opinion, you have to make this job vacancy attractive. You have to set up assets for the future. And then you have to make sure whoever you hire to make the decisions with those assets has a sustainable set of ideals. And that was the biggest issue I had with Chris Grier as the process played itself out. The negotiable identity and the lack of conviction, and this is who we are, cost you dearly. Because I want to put the 5 top 100 draft selections the Dolphins are currently scheduled to make in 2026 into perspective. They have their own first-round pick. They have their own second-round pick. They have their own third-round pick. They've got a third-round pick from the Texans because they traded out of the fourth-round pick last year to get a third-round pick this year for Woody Marks. So the Texans could draft Woody Marks. And now they have the pick from Philadelphia, which is the Eagles' own. The Eagles had two, one from the Jets and one of their own. Those 5 selections is one less top 100 draft selection than the Dolphins made in the 2022 NFL draft, the 2023 NFL draft, the 2024 NFL draft, and the 2025 NFL draft combined. 4 years. You made one more top 100 draft selection than this group is currently scheduled to have right now. That is appalling. And for all the things that the Dolphins tried to do, and you see other teams across the league that they are able to do, Howie Roseman always makes these deals. How does Howie Roseman always make these deals? Because Howie Roseman collected a surplus of assets, and he uses them to be aggressive at times, but then he uses them to reload at times, and then he uses them to draft a whole bunch of players at times. It's a lot of opportunistic year over year. What makes the most sense for us? Oh, I get to offload a player that's expensive. No problem. We'll eat the cap with how we structure our contracts. And I've got a guy waiting in the wings, and I got 2 more premium picks that I can use to take a shot on it, whether I trade for a veteran player or if I bring somebody in through the draft. When you exhaust your assets to that degree, this is what you get. This is why the roster looks the way it looks. And this is why you, unfortunately, in my opinion, it's not optimized talent retention and talent strategy to trade Jaelan Phillips, but it's necessary for the state of affairs of the franchise. Because in a singular transaction, paying a portion of, or the vast majority of, Jaelan Phillips's outstanding balance of contract, and I don't know the exact number. I've seen some thrown around that the Dolphins paid the maximum minus the minimum salary that the Eagles had to take on, and a couple of the numbers in between. I don't know the exact number right now that the Dolphins are paying, but paying cash to offload a player to buy up a draft pick when that player is a premium position player who is very productive, theoretically in the prime of his career, that's not ideal. But Phillips, when we talk about we want to mitigate some of our injury risk, Jaelan Phillips is an injury risk. He had an ACL and an Achilles the last 2 years. He stayed healthy through 9 games. He's in a contract here. There's no magic compensatory pick to be had here, right? The Dolphins would have had to game the free agent system again, which they kind of did this year and definitely did 2 years ago. And everybody's mad about the holes it left behind on the roster when they did that to get a few more draft picks, but it only amplified what they weren't doing with their draft resources and their young players and their young talent acquisition and made it even worse. So they'd have to game the system. You'd have to hope somebody would be paying Jaelan Phillips on an annual basis $22 to $24 million. And then you'd have to hope that Phillips would stay healthy for all of 2026 to play the snaps to qualify. If you want a compensatory 3 in 2027, all of those things would have had to happen. Instead of, we're going to cash out now. And it's at the expense of a few $1 million. And we'll get a 3rd-round pick now that's higher up in the queue, even if it's only a few spots, than the compensatory pick. And it's a year earlier that you get to have it in your back pocket. It's a bird in the hand versus one in the bush. And the one in the bush, you got to climb through the woods to find the bush to get the bird. So I'm fine with an understanding of where the Dolphins are at from a roster and a job for a vacancy of an executive position, and knowing that what this offseason is going to be. You're not going to have clean books this year. This is the cleaning of the books offseason in 2026. This is what do you do with the Tua Tagovailoa contract? We got to move on from Tyreek Hill. We're going to have to move on from Bradley Chubb. We're potentially going to be looking at names like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Austin Jackson. And what do you do with those contracts? And how many of them do you just offload, right? That's like sets the stage for record-breaking dead cap money. You're not going to be spending a bunch of cash in free agency this year, nor should you. You got to build a foundation of roster. And I think there's some young guys that are on rookie contracts and a few guys that aren't on rookie contracts that serve as a really nice foundation and base to start something. I think you're much further ahead when this process starts than what you were in 2019. But you got to build up a foundation of roster. If they came out and spent like gangbusters in free agency this offseason in 2026 with their cap books looking like what it is, I'd be pissed. Because it would be just another short-sighted, short-term, shortcut. And we can't afford any more of those. So that means you're going to have to take some L's in the process to build up the assets. This is an example of that. Cost of doing business. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. You talk about a game changer. Next-day delivery is on that list. And they also have their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support to make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today. Score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. The cost of doing business. This is when you swing for the fences and you whiff. This is what it looks like, right? And Champ Kelly is the interim general manager. When he was the interim GM with the Raiders, took over on November 1st of 2023. And if you were curious what his trade deadline resume looked like in 2023, he didn't have one, because the Raiders waited until the day after the trade deadline to make the change to Champ Kelly. Champ signed a few veteran players to the roster, one by waivers. They claimed Jack Jones off waivers from New England, ended up starting for them for a year and a half. They signed DJ Fluker in free agency. Remember, that was when that was like Dolphins Twitter's answer to the offensive line problems, was a guy who'd been out of the league for 3 years, DJ Fluker, because he looked good in a workout. That's kind of the body work. So this serves as the first major, I don't want to say bullet point on the resume, but this is a big opportunity for Champ Kelly to audition really for an executive role of his own. And it doesn't behoove him to give away players either. I can tell you the historical precedent, because it's been the thing that I think a lot of Dolphins fans that I have heard from, they struggle with the price. They struggle with a third-round pick. They struggle with paying the money. The historical precedent here says this is about right for the Dolphins. They get a third-round draft choice for a former first-round pass rusher, very similarly to the Chase Young deal in 2023. Chase Young was a top 5 draft pick who had missed about a year and a half's worth of games, had his 5th-year option decline, so he was in the 4th but final year of his deal when he got traded from Washington to San Francisco. And San Francisco traded a compensatory 3 to Washington for Chase Young's services. And the 49ers had a compensatory 3 to trade because it was a part of the league's, some of their initiatives to kind of help with minority hiring for leadership positions. If you lose somebody off your staff that qualifies, the team is gifted a third-round pick in the ensuing NFL draft and the year after NFL draft. So the 49ers had that in their back pocket as like a surplus draft pick in the third round through some of those initiatives. And that's what they traded to land Chase Young. So it was a late third round pick. And those initiative compensatory picks go at the very end of the round. Miami gets what is currently the 95th overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft or 2026 NFL draft. Will change depending on, what the Eagles do. Could be as low as 96. Could be higher, right? And they have to pay down the fifth-year option portion of Phillips's contract so that the Eagles are onboarding the equivalent of rookie contract type of money, and you get a pick that's in the same general range. It's a little bit earlier, and it's not a compensatory 3, even though the Eagles had 2 third-round picks, one from the Jets from the Hassan Reddick deal that they made several years back, and obviously their own third-round draft choice. Miami gets the Eagles' third-round draft choice. The money piece of this, we've kind of touched on. There's a price to pay for how you went about your business and how you did and did not do things. And I've made peace with that, right? In a perfect world, will you have an extra $3 million or $5 million to roll over in cap space? Sure. But none of that changes the conversations about Bradley Chubb and Jaelan Phillips and Austin Jackson and potentially Alec Ingold and Jason Sanders and potentially James Daniels and Minkah Fitzpatrick. There's a lot of names that, there's potential cap savings to be found. And that's before you even touch on what are the Dolphins going to do with Tua Tagovailoa. When it gets reported by Ian Rappaport over the weekend, that Tua is playing for his starting job the rest of the season. And not like long-term plans. But Tua might get benched this year per Ian Rappaport. And if you do that, you don't put that toothpaste back in the tube, right? If you make a decision like that, somebody's not coming back between the head coach and the quarterback if that's the case. Somebody's out in addition to Chris Grier. So that's on the table. And knowing that some of these things have overhanging costs that extend into 2026. It's much more important for me for the Dolphins to be a team that has a lot of assets and a lot of flexibility from the draft element of this. Because you want to have a foundation of this is what you have to work with if you come in and run football operations for the Dolphins. This is what you can bank on. And I can tell you right now, if you only have 5 picks in the top 100, if it were me, I'd be finding an opportunity somewhere to trade down and get more assets again rolling into the future. The more flexibility you have with your assets, you don't have to just draft players with it, right? You could trade it for veteran players. You could trade it for a veteran player like a Jaelan Phillips and get him for $1 million in the second half of your year on a 1-year rental when you're competing. But it only makes sense to do that when you're competing. You could trade it for a player who is playing for a team that had a regime change, like the Jets did with Jarvis Brownlee, a second-year corner who looked like a rousing success of a hit. You can use it to draft players. You could use it to trade up. You could use it to trade down and get a better asset next year, like the Dolphins did with their 4th-round pick in the draft, right? Like, there's so many different things you can do with these assets. And I, as somebody who spent the offseason talking about how we need to create more long-term flexibility, offload some big contracts, mitigate your injury risk on the roster. And now on top of that, you stack, we have a regime change, so we need to maximize what flexible resources and assets we have. Jaelan Phillips being a shoe that drops is one that I'm disappointed about, but I get. And Mark on Twitter told me I only like this move because I'm a content guy and a draft guy. This is about team building and having an honest conversation about where this team is at and why they're at where they're at and what needs to be different. Because I would love to have Jaelan Phillips on the contract long term. But at what cost? What are you paying Jaelan Phillips? What's the risk with Jaelan Phillips? And as much as I love JP and I wish him all the best in Philadelphia, I might go see a game, right? Like I'm up by Philly. I might go to an Eagles game. Cheer on JP and the Birds. As much as I would love to have him, part of this is we have other contracts at other costs that we're trying to we're going to have to transition away from, and there's overhead with that too. And you might feel like paying more money to offload him and buy up a draft pick is only compounding that issue, but I think a few $1,000,000 is small potatoes versus what needs to happen and what's going to happen, whether it happens in 2026, 2025, or 2027. Who might be next? We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on all of the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even when you miss the start and tip of the game, or if you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm playing this really awkward game with myself where I have my second monitor here, and it's got Twitter up, and bloop, things are popping up, right? And it's a Monday at noon. And I'm just waiting for the next Dolphins thing to show up so I can react to it. But I had no such luck thus far, other than Jordan Schultz suggesting that Minkah Fitzpatrick, the team is open to trading. Sources, the Dolphins have been open to trading 5-time Pro Bowl safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, and there has been interest from multiple teams. Miami has already traded Jaelan Phillips to the Eagles on Monday morning for a third-round pick. This is one I would cash as well. And I like Minkah. I think Minkah's been one of your most sturdy defensive players. I understand there's been some coverage and miscommunication breakdowns as you as a team have had to move him all around, and he's a deep safety, and he's a half safety, and he's a second-level player, then he's a nickel, because everybody's getting hurt, right? You got pinball all around. But Minkah's under contract for 2026, has been interested in an extension. The season's been a disaster. The Dolphins restructured his deal and paid him a lump sum up front, so they're already going to be costing themselves money in that regard. But if you could use that to leverage and proactively have bought up another draft pick, what are we talking? We talking another one? Talking another top 100 pick? Could you get Minkah Fitzpatrick on a rental? Probably not. I would assume the Minkah, knowing that he has no guarantee cash in 2026 as a safety, I would assume a rental there is probably, I would guess, a late 4 from a contender. Would be my guess. Maybe you could pick swap it and get something better, but you'd have to send something back with Minkah. But the cash is low that he's owed because you already restructured his contract and paid it out. If you can make peace with whatever you pay out is going to be a part of this dead money, it's going to be a record breaker. I think it's going to be a record-breaking amount of dead cap. The 49ers currently have that. It's about $103 million in dead cap. I think if the Dolphins want to properly offload, whether that's through cutting players like Tyreek Hill before $11 million in salary guarantees, whether that's moving on from Bradley Chubb, who has a $30 million cap hit, $31 million cap hit next year and has a base salary at like $22 million, whether that is Tua Tagovailoa, if you want to maintain Tua Tagovailoa for another year and keep him as the bridge quarterback, depending on what happens with Mike McDaniel and yada, yada, and Austin Jackson, the whole shebang. If you're going to do it right? And the way you do it right is if you have players that definitively are not a part of the long-term puzzle. And that's where I justify it for Minkah. Minkah's been good, and Minkah's been a good locker room teammate. I really respect the way that he kind of went to bat for Dante Trader after the Chargers game about I dropped the covers there and I made a mistake because I heard a call in the backhand, so on and so forth. But Minkah's near that age of 30, and your first competitive year through a build is probably going to be 2027. Like next year is a foundational year, reset year for your books, a lot of young players like this year, but an even more extreme version of that. What's the level of play going to be like in 2 years? And you're talking about at that stage, you're going to need a contract extension. And you got to pay somebody, but like moving on from players like this and moving on from players like Bradley Chubb and moving on from players like Jaelan Phillips and Tyreek Hill, that's why like I'd be fine keeping Devon Achane as somebody who I think has a runway to be a contributor into the next competitive window. That's why I'd be fine, or like I'd be pissed if you traded Jalen Waddle. Guys like Aaron Brewer and Jordan Brooks are guys that are kind of in the prime of their career. They have 2026 under contract, but I can see them still playing into their prime after 2026. So those guys would not be next for me. I'm not interested personally in trading the Jordan Brookses of the world and the Aaron Brewers of the world. But Minkah, as a guy who you've kind of already started to see some of the decline, it's an inevitable piece of the puzzle. If you have somebody that's interested in a mid-round draft choice and it clears the way for you to get Dante Trader and Jason Marshall and all these young guys on the field and figure out which one of them you feel like you can put any eggs in the basket with next year, great. Right, this is going to be a long process. I'm not going to BS you. There's not going to be a quick gratification turnaround unless they absolutely capture lightning in a bottle, which can happen. Look at the Commanders last year. It can happen. But if it does happen, that only makes what you choose to do after that point even much more important and playing the long game. And that's what's hard. Because us as fans, we want to be impatient. We want to see the results. And Dolphins fans, understandably, more than anybody else, want to see the results. Because this team has struggled with the big picture competitiveness in the postseason for a quarter century now. And I understand, and I want to see a playoff win just as badly as you do. Believe it or not, my entire rooting interest on what the Dolphins do and do not do is rooted in what's going to be good content. Give me a break. But if you're going to do it, I sincerely believe your process has been rooted in shortcuts. And you cannot afford to do it anymore. So if that means more bad medicine now, if that means paying off more of a salary to get a better pick and kickstart that process, now hire the right person to run your football operation, and one that you're going to be willing to give the honest effort in, like you gave Chris Grier. Chris Grier got more than a fair shake to get it right. And the longer it went, the worse the process got. Can't happen with this next group. And it's because if it does, we'll be right back in these shoes again in maybe 2029, maybe 2030, maybe 2031, maybe if we're lucky, 2032. Because it is cyclical, and there will be a build, and there will be a swell, and there will be a peak, as long as you're not completely directionless. But if you want to sustain it, there's a who's who of ways not to do it. And there's a select few organizations that have great sterling gold standard reputations of how you do this, but you have to let it play out. And you have to take the time to build. And if this process starts now, and that means we got to take some bad medicine in the process, I, for one, am okay with that. Even if it means losing an outstanding person and a good player in Jaelan Phillips at the expense of a few $1 million more to get a round better draft choice to make it happen. That's it for us here today on the show. Kyle Krabs, appreciate you all for checking out Locked On Dolphins. Keep it locked in here. It is your team every day. Make it a great rest of your Monday. I'll be back again soon to react to whatever other news we get the rest of the way. Hope to see you then. Fins up.